All right, welcome back to an episode of Uncommon Advice, our first episode here with my new co-host, Zenon. So we are going to dive in today and bring you guys the uncommon advice that's needed for success inside of being an entrepreneur. So we're going to dive in. What are you thinking?
Oh, I'm excited for it. I mean, this episode is definitely going to be one of my favorites for sure. It's the first one, but it'll be the most exciting one because we're going to dig into you, Nate. We're going to dig into the entrepreneur journey that you took. So why don't you give us a little background on how that went?
Oh man. Well, it depends. So I grew up in a household. We can go back far. We can go back not too far, but yeah, I think for me where it all started was really watching my dad. Like I watched my dad get laid off when I was younger, kind of old enough to understand what was going on, and him trying to really just figure things out and trying to build businesses. So I watched him try and start a lawn company. I watched him try and start a maintenance company, and then a couple other things along the way. And one thing that ended up sticking was I wrestled growing up, and my wrestling coach loaned my dad $1,000, and then my uncle let him use his truck. And then my dad turned that into a multi-million-dollar company with borrowed $1,000 and a truck. So I kind of watched that evolution of him grow through that. So I learned a lot. And frankly, growing up as a kid, I always just wanted money. I wanted to make money. And so that's really what I needed to do was figure out I didn't have it and I wanted some. So I had all kinds of good hustles, and I had a handful of questionable hustles as a young kid and growing up trying to find my way into this entrepreneurship world, right? So that's kind of where I first kind of got my taste and really decided I was going to get into it. So I entered college. I was super motivated growing up as a kid, like kind of focused, like all gas, no brakes, just like I titled the book. But I wanted to be into a physical therapist in the sports industry. And so I did 200 community service hours in high school before I got to college, because I knew when I got to college, I would have to have those 200 service hours to apply to grad school to become a physical therapist. In my first semester in college, I had 8 a.m. biology and chemistry and all these different classes are super early. I made it to about 50% of them. And then I just realized, you know what? I'm just going to own the physical therapy company. I'm not going to go ahead and become a physical therapist. And that's when my real business journey kind of started.
For the entrepreneur, huh? So with your dad, did you in that journey that he took, were you ever involved in any of those businesses, or did you just watch him do it?
Yeah, I mean, I learned real quick what child labor was. So overworked and underpaid. So no, I'm just joking. But I think with my dad, he always had me doing the grunt work, and he had me, I remember like having to climb up in the dumpster and jump up and down to make sure the cardboard boxes and the trash was, so we could fill it more before the dumpster came, like I would be doing that. But I did, I do a lot of the grunt work. But what was really cool about that growing up throughout high school is I got to actually spend a lot of time with both my grandpas, and I would be able to travel with them to go do lighting maintenance and projects and stuff around the community. So on during the summer if I wasn't, training for a sport or didn't have anything going on, I'd be, driving from Toledo, Ohio up to Detroit, Michigan to work all day long with my grandpa. And so a lot of cool time with them and just lessons learned. So that was always, pretty cool experience that I got to have. So, so I think I didn't realize at the time what my dad was doing, with that, like letting me spend that quality time with some wise men, because he knew I probably wouldn't listen to him because I was a teenager, but I would listen to my grandpas because they were obviously wise and my dad was not, So even though I say that jokingly, but
so with the whole thing of going, so was physical therapy the first business you opened up, or was that just in school a thought of like, man, I just don't want to do, I'm going to own it? Or did you actually open one up, and is that how the entrepreneur life started?
No, I never opened one. So never opened up a actual physical therapy location. I ended up actually going through college, getting my business degree, and ended up as a scuba diving instructor in Key West.
Hey, that's not a bad job, huh?
So that lasted 2 weeks, and then I ended up bartending at a restaurant and managing a surf shop. And then one day I'm like, man, I really got to do something different. So I actually moved home for 2 weeks. I couldn't do it. I had 2 weeks. Love you, Ma, but 2 weeks was enough. when I was 18 years old. So I got back, and I was actually my buddy who lives here in Charlotte now too, and he had me, hey, I can use your help. So what that meant was the grunt work again. So I'm in a house spackling holes because he worked for a painting company. So I'm spackling all these holes. I'm by myself in the house. And I'll never forget, like the next day he goes, were you at this house? I was like, yeah. And I mean, I at that time, if you learned anything about me as a kid, I really actually hated manual labor. And to this day, I'm very in tune to a keyboard and working on a computer, so I don't want to hurt my hands. So I still don't like manual labor.
So you just pay someone.
Yeah. So it's, it's kind of an ongoing joke, but I think he called me, he's like, well, you missed like a whole room. I was like, oh man, I was like, my bad. I was like, by the way, I'm moving to Charlotte tomorrow. And
you were done with it, huh?
and I moved down to Charlotte, walked up and down streets, got a job at a restaurant, Fox and Hound, got a job there, hanging out, trying to figure things out, and I ended up getting a job in the mortgage industry. And so got a job in the mortgage industry. The guy didn't really want to hire me at the time because I was just some kind of like laid back surfer guy. And then I came in and kind of, set the record for, first month employee sales record and stuff like that throughout that process. Did really well. Worked
so
nonstop.
For the laid back surfer, did you have the long hair and the...
Yeah, if I could find these pictures, they are pretty comical. So, ironically, I had, so my parents are a little old school, right? So I had, I don't know if this is PC these days, but I had real long, I got curly hair if I grow it out, if I could grow it out. It's curly, it's bushy. I think that's it's from the Lebanese side in me. And I had earrings that I got when I was in college. I had them in for like 3 months in college, and then I was home for like winter break, and my dad called me Natalie just the entire time until I took him out. And so I had long hair and earrings back in the day. I got rid of them both.
Going into that mortgage company, I mean, you said the guy didn't want to hire you, but you come out and you just show it off, right? Mm-hmm. So what did that journey take you from there? Did you just keep diving into that mortgage company, or?
Yeah, I mean, I hustled. I mean, I worked all day, played all night, and I was young, and I was 21, 22, and I started making, good money at a young age. I started making six figures right out of college in that job, and ended up spending it, making it and spending it, and having a lot of fun, and not really but getting burnt out, frankly. So I got burnt out, and I ended up basically quitting that job and going to Costa Rica for a couple of weeks to surf after about 19, 20 months. And then I got bored of that. I'm like, all right, well, I can't just be surfing. I got a taste of making money. So I wanted to make more because eventually it runs out, and ended up running out of money. And so I got connected with the guy in the mortgage industry in the Outer Banks, and it was pretty cool. He took me under his wing. He saw my motivation and kind of the hustle that I had. And this guy, Ken, I'll never forget Ken, still talk to him this day, but he was really kind of my true first mentor that got me into kind of not just hustling, but hustling smarter and figuring out. So he got me into real estate. He made me buy my first property. I was trying to back out of it. I bought he was a real estate investor, owned a mortgage company, owned like a CD shop, like all this kind of, cool stuff. I'll never forget. I was like, man, Ken, because he owned this like reggae shop too. And I'm like, there's a song that I kept hearing in Costa Rica, and it was Roller Skates. It was the name of the song. And I was like trying to like hum the melody to him. And I'm an awful singer, so I can only imagine, but he knew right away. He's like, that's Roller Skates. And he was like, and he went downstairs, grabbed me the CD and gave it to me. But Ken was a good guy, man. He really got me into the kind of really, he kind of wet that whistle a little bit to get me into entrepreneurship and push me forward, right? And let me take that leap. And I was trying to buy my first property and trying to back out of buying my first property. And he looked at me, he's like, I'm not letting you. You're closing. How much money do you need? And I'm like, well, it'd be nice if I could have, this extra kind of cash capital. And so he gave me 25 grand at like a 40% interest rate. And so I learned real quick about private money. And I'll never forget that deal. First deal I ever did, and we ended up fixing the house up, doing some stuff with it, and making over 180,000 on the flip with it. So like it was a really cool experience, and I'm glad he pushed me. And then from there, I went on and parlayed that into more real estate deals and started a mortgage company. Back in Charlotte. And then I full circle, come back to Charlotte, start a mortgage company.
So you started a mortgage company. What year was this?
That was in 2005.
So we're now in 2023, and the mortgage company's not up now.
Nope.
Let's go from the beginning on that mortgage company. How did you where did it start? I mean, I could tell the love from where it came from. You were making a lot of money and being pushed. So where did this mortgage company start, and where did it get to, and what happened to it?
One thing is being resourceful, right? Learning how to be resourceful and figuring out the rules that you have to play within. And so I hadn't been in the mortgage industry long enough to actually be at that time. I don't know what the regulations are now, but you had to have a broker in charge kind of thing, right? And so I didn't have enough years under my belt to be considered that. And so what I ended up doing was finding a guy that I knew, that I met early on in my career that had that time, and brought him in as a partner to launch the mortgage company. That mortgage company grew to about, we had 25 people. We also had an office in Hawaii, office in North Carolina, and 25 employees. And that during kind of our peak on that. And then 2008 hit. I was still doing a bunch of real estate deals and fixing things up and getting involved in all that in the mortgage company. And the leads dried up, the mortgages dried up, real estate dried up, and we grew it really, really fast, all gas, no brakes, and then lost it all really fast too. So it was a challenging time in 2008. I'll never forget sitting there in a condo that was being foreclosed on with Susan, my now wife, and watching a mouse run across the floor while I was actually like just messing, like counting change. I don't know if anyone out here listening grew up in the family, but in my family, we always had the change bucket, and all the change always went in the bucket, and that change bucket was money we used on vacation growing up. And so I still to this day got a bowl where change goes, like it's just a habit that we learn over the years. So I still have that, but I remember having that change, jar bucket back then, and I was counting that change and rolling it, getting ready to take it to the bank because that's all the money I had.
So you said you had one here in North Carolina, which I mean is awesome, but then you had one basically across the world. You had one in Hawaii.
Yep. So
why Hawaii? Out of anywhere you could put it in the continental United States, why did you decide Hawaii?
Well, so it is odd. It is weird, but we chose Hawaii because that was my family lives in Hawaii. So they ended up moving to Hawaii. And my dad was like, hey, if you're going to do it over there, why don't we start one over here too? And so we launched a branch, created it, launched a branch there, launched a branch in North Carolina, and that was it.
Yeah, so I mean...
Yeah, that's why it's random, because family was there.
So with the whole thing, I mean, knowing you for a bit now, and we know each other work-related and outside, I know you've told me you used to run before Lone Wolf. Just you. Just going from that Lone Wolf to bringing on that team and that mortgage company, how did that change for you? How did the mindset change where I'm not alone anymore? Now I got to think about 25, 30 different employees that are working with me that I have to take care of.
So Lone Wolf right there. But, I think I've always still at that time I was a Lone Wolf. And to this day, I still kind of have those traits, right? And I think it's just my personality. But back then I hired a guy that ran it.
Okay.
So I did my thing and focused on what I was good at, and he managed the people and everything else. And back when I was younger, I mean, I was, the guys that I was working with all day, I was partying with at night too, it was just a fast life that we were leading. And I was too close to everyone that worked with me.
Gotcha.
At that time, and because they're buddies from growing up, I had guys that were working with me that I knew from high school. I had guys that were working for me that I knew from college, all this time. So it was more of like a family kind of environment. But at the same time, I would say that was not, at that age of 24, 25 years old, is probably not the smartest idea. But, I just had Pete who worked with me. Pete ran it. He managed the people. He did all that. I just focused on doing what I was good at and visionary growth processes. And
so I'm guessing at that time you were mentioning it wasn't good to work all the buddies together, because I bet the party and a lot of money was coming in. Everybody was making good money, so a lot of money was probably going out. Is that correct? Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, it happens. I feel like I'm in that same. I was in that same situation. I'm young. I make decent money, and then I do the same thing. I mean, I was talking to you about the other day, like before pandemic, I didn't have a savings or investing or anything. I mean, that's really what started. It's like, it's time to start putting stuff into the pocket. But you had a successful company, which is awesome. The entrepreneur journey, it's on the high.
Yeah.
You're feeling great. You're like, man, I'm making it. I'm young. I'm making good money. And then it goes boom, like you said, it goes down. And what happens that it goes down?
Well, I mean, I joke about it now, but on paper, I was worth like $3.5 million on one day. And then I woke up the next morning and I was like worth -$1 million, So it was one of those things where the economy shifted, and okay. I operated so fast, pushed so hard that and I started buying my own bullshit, you know, like thinking it was me. I started believing the success was me, not the market conditions. Because when market conditions are great, anyone can be great, right? But you know, being young and aggressive, the ego took off. So I wasn't paying attention to what was going on in the marketplace, because it was, you know, everything I turned touched to gold. It was going to continue to turn to gold. Everything I did touched in the future, and that just, you know, that ego got in the way, and I lost everything because I wasn't staying forward thinking. I wasn't watching what was going on. I wasn't able to make a pivot fast enough when everything started going south. I made some bad deals, got with some, you know, people that just sucked at their job, and had a developer steal a bunch of money from me. And so that kind of hurt, and it just made it parlayed into just, you know, a bunch of just downward spiral. And once that spiral starts, man, you just go, and I was out. And I ended up losing everything. And I think, you know, it was a blessing and a curse. One was a blessing because it put my ego in check and made me learn a lot of great lessons. And then also to this day, like, Susan, my wife, better half, you know, equal half, I guess, better half. But she was there from, you know, on the highs, on the lows, and on the highs, you know. So we just recently sold a deal and did really well with it. So, you know, like, she's still there for the ups, the downs, and the ups. But I think that was a blessing and a curse, like learning about who's really in your corner, right? The people in your corner are always there when the money's flowing, but they're not always there when the money isn't. But and at the same time too, it was an opportunity for me to rebuild, right? I mean, I got to start fresh. I had an opportunity to go do something. I had started getting into the internet marketing stuff in 2006, but I was so entrenched in the mortgage stuff, I was kind of just dabbling in it. And then in 2007 and 8, I started doing a little bit more of it, started doing some cooler stuff with it. And then I had this opportunity to rebuild, and I dove in. I was like, well, I did that wrong. I'm not going to do it that way again. And I was tied down to an office and all this stuff. I didn't want to be tied down anymore. I wanted to be able to be virtual. I wanted to be, you know, internet was starting to get bigger and bigger, and the way that you made money online was changing. And I was, instead of being so stuck in my ways thinking that, you know, having the realization, hey, everything I touch doesn't turn to gold, right? It wasn't me that was creating all that success. My drive was helping push it, but the market conditions were good. And so now I realized, and I had to sit there and go, you know what I need to do? I was like, I just need to stay constantly forward thinking, what's going to work, what's not working, where are the changes happening, and doing all that. So, and that's where we got into the marketing space, and it's a journey from there. I don't think we got enough time today to probably dive into all those learning lessons. What
would you tell an entrepreneur, young entrepreneur who saw that light, is seeing that light of success that you did? What would you tell them so what happened to you doesn't happen to them?
Be willing to listen and be willing to learn. Humility, right? Because when things are good, it's easy to say it was good because of me. And when things are bad, it's easy to say it was bad because of that person or this reason or that reason, right? And one thing that's really helped me over the years is, even though like I was depressed for like a week and a half, couple of days, whatever it was, we're going bankrupt and losing everything and thinking I'm just a complete failure and everything sucks. But I was able to at least turn that moment around and look in the mirror and go, all right, I got to fix something. Only one I got is me to fix, right? So I think as an entrepreneur, you have to be able to look at yourself, analyze what you're doing. Is it right? Is it wrong? If you made a mistake, screw it, move on, be resilient, go past it. And if you can be resilient, look at yourself, make corrections, make pivots, and understand that you're not perfect, right? And that, but you are going to make pivots, and you understand you're going to make mistakes, get over them quickly, and move forward and do it, you know, just corrections, right?
Yeah. So would you, let's say back then everything went perfect, would you go back and was that a thing you would bring back if it was perfect and it was still successful? Or are you okay with what happened because it brought you to where you are today?
No, I wouldn't change it.
Okay.
I mean, I would probably change kind of how I operated, and some of hindsight's 2020, right? So I definitely would have made different decisions on certain things.
Of course.
But I wouldn't be where I'm at today, and I wouldn't have the outlook, I wouldn't have the perspective, and I would 100% not be sitting here right now if that stuff did not happen. Mm-hmm. And so we can't change what we've been through, we can just change where we're going, right? And so I would say I would not change it because the amount of learning lessons that I learned along the way have made me better for it. But if you were to transplant me right now with the information that I have in my head back to 2006 and 7, I mean, yeah, absolutely. I would do different decisions because I got all that knowledge now, right?
Oh, of course. So I mean,
me and Buffett be hanging out, chilling.
So we had all that time. You grew, you got into the digital marketing space, and now we got Marketing Rebels, which is what we're working on growing now. Tell us, well, I know it, but let's tell the audience a little bit of more Marketing Rebel and what is the goal and what you preach actually about this. I'm not going to say it because I know you're going to bring it up, but what you preach and what the goal with Marketing Rebels is.
The simple side of Marketing Rebels is we want to build audiences to buy stuff from brands they love and brands that can impact them, right? Create an impact in that manner. So business-wise, Marketing Rebels is a company where we build large audiences. Because if you own your audience and you create $1 million audience, you can pivot and maneuver no matter what is going on in the world and the economy, right? And so for us, building $1 million audiences, building cool audiences, and providing them access to the brands and products that are going to impact their lives and improve their lives and things that are going to help them, right? So that's a big piece of it. But for me, Marketing Rebels is also an avenue to not only build that stuff, but to be able to create a positive impact in our community. So one thing I mention a lot is a lot of people think that you should follow your passion and try and make money from your passion. There's not always profits in passion. And a lot of people say there is, but there's not. I'm speaking from experience. But I do think that this is something that, marketing is something I enjoy. Don't get me wrong. I enjoy marketing. We're good at it. I feel fortunate we have a small team, but I feel like we have an amazing team, so like, I'm excited about that. I've had the big companies and the big agency before. And like, I would rather have a smaller group of amazing people as opposed to a big group of people. So I think for us, it allows us also to start creating an impact inside of our community because the profits that we generate allows us also to give back, right? Being able to not only locally, but worldwide. And so, yeah.
Yes. I mean, $1 million audience, I know since day one I've been working here, since I've known you, that's been the thing you preach. I mean, and the one thing, Nate, that, stood out for me from when I ever first met you was actually, I met Nate. One day we're all involved in this football, and it's this football coach, and Nate one day host this meeting in his office, and I come in and see in the office, I'm like, oh wow, this is nice. And after that day, I actually went back home and I started researching Nate. I started like, okay, what does Nate do? What's Nate done? All that stuff. And I've seen the success he's had and where he's been. And I texted you, I think it was maybe a couple of days later, is like, hey, can I sit down with you and ask you a couple questions on how you got to where you were? And the one, Nate, at that point, Nate really didn't know me, just known me probably from that moment. And he's like, yeah, come in. So I remember sitting down with Nate, talking with him, and I know he does this with anybody. He's an open book. I don't think he hides. He wants people to succeed. I remember that one time with you. We sat down there. We spoke for hour, maybe 2 hours. I remember Susan was shooting you, hey, the table's ready, and we're over here still talking. But that's the kind of person that Nate's been, and actually has been a good mentor for me. Just knowing Nate for a couple months, it's helped me grow, but also the network. That's something that I think a lot of people out there don't understand how important your network is. So can you speak on that, on how important it is to have a network, not just a random network, but a network, a group of people that everybody has that wants the same goal. Everybody has a different path to it, but everybody wants the same goal. Can you talk about how important that network is to have?
Yeah, so I briefly touched on it. When I was younger, not everyone was in my corner when I lost everything, right? And when I learned along that way is your network is has a huge impact, right? So with that, this thing right here and on it, this was given to me by a close friend of mine, Mark Evans, DM, and he gave it to all of us in his mastermind. So I've been in masterminds. I got in my first one in 2007, and I've been in one ever since. Some for tactical, some for personal growth, some for, bigger thinking, all different things. But on this, it talks about one relationship, right? Because we are really one relationship away from great opportunity and great conversations and the next big opportunity that might pop up, right? Or one relationship from a big breakthrough mentally. So I think network is massively important. Network is one of those things that the people that are in it, my mom used to always tell me when I was a kid, and she was so full of it when she told me this. She didn't know anything because I was young and knew it all myself. But she would always tell me that, hey, you are who you hang with.
Oh, I mean, I think a lot of us got
one. And it's funny now, right? Because I tell her that. I was like, Mom, you know what? Yes, I know you were right. Now that I'm older, but you 100% are who you hang with. And if you aren't around the people that are helping push, drive, and make you become the best version of yourself, then you need to be around better people. And now, don't get me wrong. There's times that we grow, and we're getting ready to enter a new phase of life, and the people that helped us, that we've been growing with, aren't going to be ready to go with you. And if they're not ready to go with you, you got to go anyways, and you got to leave them behind. Now, that doesn't mean you don't have to talk to them and you got to cut them off, because you still have those conversations. And I struggled with that after a while, like realizing when I had out-leveled people that I was around, no knock on them. It was just we had different goals and aspirations, right? And those different goals and aspirations are going to lead you to do different things and go different places. So when you have people that are impacting you, that are in your network, you want to keep them around. And you also want to not just be a taker. You can't be. And I think one thing I learned very on one of my favorite books, The Go Giver by Bob Burg, is really talks about just giving. If you focus on giving, what's going to happen is things will eventually come back to you. But what happens is a lot of people like to give with expectations. It's like, I'm going to give, but I expect this from you. And that's why we get so much disappointment in our life, right? If when we give with expectations.
Agree.
And now there's times, obviously, now giving without expectations is different than agreements, right?
Yeah.
so don't get the twisted too much, but I think giving without expectations, but having the right network has been a massive impact on me. I'm in a group of entrepreneurs now. So like the biggest thing in your network, if you want to get somewhere, there's ways to do it the hard way, or finding somebody who's already forged that path that you're going on and paying them, getting in front of them. Don't just ask them to pick their brain. Hey, I'm willing to pay you and invest in you to have a conversation with me to help me get where I want to go. You're going to find if you approach it that way, most of those people are going to just come on in. Let's just sit down and hang out. Let's talk. I'm happy to help, right? Great people will help. Use those opportunities, right? Find someone who's forged that path you've already been on. Get in front of them however you can, and to ask them the questions to help you get where you want to go, so you don't have to make the mistakes. You don't have to do the things wrong. You don't have to do it the hard way.
Mm-hmm. I mean, yeah, that's a good way to put it. I mean, for me, like you told me, is the people you hang with. I mean, the network is big, but you have someone that, since I met you, you guys are pretty close. You and Mark.
Mm-hmm.
You just came back from Miami with Mark.
Mm-hmm.
He did his premiere, which you said was awesome. Did Mark play any role into your growth into where you are now, into this?
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, I wouldn't even know what internet marketing was. Well, I would now, but I mean, I got introduced to internet marketing through him in 2006. Okay. At the time, Susan and I just started dating, and she was like, hey, do you want to go to the beach? My college roommate's down there. She's dating this guy that is, he's into business, and you're into business. You want to go? I was like, you need a ride? So we went to the beach, and Mark and I met, man, and we just hit it off. But Mark's he's just that kind of personality, man. Wherever he goes, he makes friends with people, and it usually I'm the introvert. I'm hanging out. I'm good with just one conversation. And, but yeah, so him and I we hit it off, and a month later I was flying out to LA and going to a internet marketing info summit with Dan Kennedy. No relation, but he did write the foreword for a book. So no relation, but I went out and got really just thrown in, and Mark looked at me and said, hey man, you're going to want to buy one of everything from everyone on the stage, because these are professional sales men, right? On stage giving presentations, and their goal is to sell product. And so I got introduced to that world, and he was like, buy one thing and execute on it. And that's what I did. And, so it's phenomenal advice, and he's been full of nuggets all over the years for that. But he's also, him and I, we've been sitting at the bar having cocktails together, just talking about life and where we came from and what we're doing. And, getting out, it's evolved from that moment to us getting together and the kids hanging out and playing. And over these years. So I mean, he definitely, people say brother from another mother, like that's Mark. And what's funny is a lot of times people think we look alike because we're just short and bald, but, so, with that, Mark and I, he definitely true. I mean, he's an inspiration. He's a brother. He's a mentor. He's, he's a confidant. He's a friend. He's, he's a great dude, but he's had a massive impact. Absolutely.
So for the entrepreneurs out there, what's the mindset you got to have to start your business, but not just start it? Because like you said, there's going to be failures along the way, but to get to success, what's the mindset an entrepreneur has to have? Because after failure and failure and failure, what I feel the normal person does is give up.
Yeah. Well, those are quitters. So not to be harsh, but I guess so. I mean, if you're going to fail and quit,
this is it. Entrepreneurship is not for you.
It's not for you. You're going to fail. You're going to fail more times than not. And the people that tell you they've never failed are full of shit. You're going to fail. You're going to make mistakes. Your ability to be resilient, your ability to power through things when times are tough. Because there's going to be moments, to this day, there are moments that I wake up and I'm like, what am I doing? I can't do this anymore. I got to do something different. But I also see on the other side of it what the vision is, what the goals are and everything else. And I know that if I did something else, I'm not going to get there. So I believe you have to believe in yourself when no one else does at the same time, right? So, there's all kinds of qualities that you need, but you're going to fail. Your ability to be resilient, get over it quickly, fail fast, as people like to say. You got to fail fast, fail forward, and you'll be just fine. But don't quit. That's the only difference is entrepreneurs that fail are willing to just keep going. Entrepreneurs that fail and quit aren't entrepreneurs. I don't know.
That's actually a great way to put it there. I mean, I haven't gotten into the entrepreneur because I'm with you, but coming into this, we spoke. I said I wanted to go into the mentorship with you, learning from you, learning from someone, like you said, someone who has already taken the path. Now learn from it. Yeah. And I've already learned a lot. I mean, I didn't know how important it was to build your audience because, man, it's crazy nowadays. You got Apple, they're doing the restrictions with the emails. You got Facebook on what you can advertise. Google's going to get into the too. It's like later on, it's like what you want to show to the people who probably going to buy your product. You're not going to get there, but when you own your own audience, like you've been saying, it's like nobody can stop you.
Yeah, well, owning $1 million audience, to come back to that, it's the $1 million audience. What's important about it is so. With Facebook, with Google, with Twitter, with all these ad platforms, it's pay to play. Mm-hmm. So when you own your audience, what do you think it is? Pay to play for advertisers. Do I expect to go build an audience as big as Facebook? That's not my goal. I'm very clear. Like we have sub niches that we go into that are only so big, but we do know there's advertisers willing to invest in those. So why do we always just have to pay to play? Why not create something that someone else is willing to pay you to play?
I wish I'd have like a mic drop. So that was perfect.
And to go back on the entrepreneur thing, because I don't want to sound too harsh on that, but there's also people I've met over the years that aren't entrepreneurs, but they're great intrapreneurs. Right.
So what's the difference?
An intrapreneur is more somebody who works with an entrepreneur, right? An entrepreneur is like someone who wants to come in and they have the ability to grow. They can execute, they want to do things. And sometimes you start out as an entrepreneur and then become and go build your own business. But entrepreneurs, there's a lot of risk and stress that comes along with owning a company and waking up and making sure that the people that are with you are being taken care of, right? If you care about people, which I do. So it's like one of those things, right? Like when people work here, it's tough. Like you start caring about the people that work with you, right? Like, and it's more of like, sometimes that the data and the numbers might make sense, but because you have an emotional, like caring for the people, you're willing to overlook some of that. But I think it's intrapreneur is somebody that may not be ready for that stress, may not be ready for all of that financial, burden that comes along with it. And then being an entrepreneur allows you to still thrive with your creativity and work with an entrepreneur that puts you in a space to be able to go do things, to be successful. But without all the risk and everything else, right? So not everyone's built to be that because there's a lot that comes into it. But I do think at the same time, if we had a bunch of entrepreneurs working here, like I'd be ecstatic. And I feel like we already have some, right? And you find that stuff out if someone's an entrepreneur based on kind of if they got passions, right? Like
Mhm.
You know, like, you know, she's off camera right now, but you know, Lydia's over here and she's got passion for fitness, right? And so she's got goals with that. And so she's here to be able to not only be a part of what we're doing, but also pick up those tips and tricks and learn and do that stuff, right? So
I mean, absolutely. I mean, I think that goes for everybody that goes into business. I mean, I feel when I coming in here, my goal with you was to learn, right? To work, but learn, because the knowledge that you have goes above and beyond what you can get. I always said this, went to school, did it all. I learned more at a job than I ever did going to school. I didn't really, school was for me, right? I got good grades. I got past it, but nothing to like this right here. Learning how to build, school doesn't teach you how to build $1 million audience and all that. But that's a good thing about entrepreneurs. A lot of entrepreneurs, like the buddy you were actually talking to, I actually just watched this video that he graduated, he didn't even finish like 9th grade and he sold his company for like $1 billion. Oh, I was watching a video. It's like he didn't go to school, but he learned everything else though.
yeah.
So I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy nowadays that there's so many ways to make money, and it doesn't have to be, guys, the $1 million audience, and it doesn't have to be digital marketing. There's so much opportunity nowadays. I mean, now you got the AI world, you got the trade world, you got all this stuff that it's just basically it's just setting your mind to it, setting a goal, setting your mind, and just staying on top of it, because failure is going to come. You're going to continue to fail and fail and fail. I'm pretty young and I've already failed a good amount of times. Like Nate said, Nate's failed thousands of times, but without those failures, you don't have the success you have today. And you've had some great success. You have a great family. You guys just bought a nice 6 acres of land where you're going to put a beautiful home on. So if people want to keep following along, right, they don't need to be watching these podcasts no, watch the podcast. Don't get me wrong on that. But we're not going to be putting these podcasts out every day.
Do we cut that out?
Where can they find you to keep hearing these tips and tricks and stuff that you're putting out?
So all my handles online are at Nate Kennedy MD, marketing doctor, at Nate Kennedy MD. So back in the day, the first product I ever bought was at that event I talked about, was creating personality within your copy. And so at the time I was in the finance world. So I put Nate Kennedy MD, the money doctor, and I had this whole caricature of me with like a lab coat on with money signs on it. When I had hair, even the caricature has hair, still receding hairline, but even at a young age. But it was, and then it evolved into the marketing doctor when I got more into marketing. But either way, so at Nate Kennedy MD is kind of all my handles. And obviously, we're excited to really be cranking back up on the Uncommon Advice podcast and really driving more information to help entrepreneurs going forward. So the stuff that you got, the lessons and things that you may not have heard, the uncommon advice, the stuff that it takes to actually get to where you want to go, not the cookie cutter stuff, the uncommon stuff. So,
well, I mean, that's a good way to wrap it up.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Awesome.